got an email regarding what to practice. And I think this is a dilemma for everybody, not just guitar players, but just people, everybody. There's always the dilemma of, man, what should I practice? There's so much stuff to practice. How can I get the most out of my practice time? And as we know, time is the most valuable asset in life. So we don't want to waste time. And, we just want to be as effective with our time as possible. So when it comes to learning music, or just in general, just being a musician, I try to break up my practice time into hour increments, or try to keep it balanced. Right now, since we're in quarantine, I break up my days into 8-hour work days. And in general, when we get back to, regular life, say if I only have 4 hours a day to practice, I'm gonna break it up into balanced increments. So the first hour I may just focus on learning scales, or make sure I know, make sure I know my scales, melodic, minor. And after a while, when you do learn all your scales, of course, you want to just continue to play through them to keep them fresh, so that you're able to use them when you need to use them in any playing situation. So for instance, if you want to just pick a key for the day. So today I want to work on D harmonic minor. So I'll just, try to keep everything fun. I'll just play through it, and you can just noodle. Try to make sure you focus on that actual scale. It's very easy to add chromatics in, as we do, when we're soloing in jazz and bebop particularly. But try to focus on that scale to make sure that you have it, just playing that scale, and force your mind to kind of not play your go-tos, as I call them, or things that you already are familiar with. You want to just play random patterns. But of course, use a metronome, use a backing track. If you have to make your own backing track, that's cool. You just what I call, you're just pretty much vibing through the scale, and just try to focus on that particular scale that you're working on for that period. So that's 1 hour of scales. Second hour, I may focus on learning a song. And that, that's very important, because when you get to the bandstand, people are gonna know, hey man, what songs do you wanna play? That's the first question. If you're in a jam session situation, that's the first question that you're gonna hear. What song do you wanna play? And if you don't know any songs, then that is gonna be a problem. So learning songs and melodies is just as important as learning your scales. So it's definitely spending an hour learning melodies. So you pick a song for the day, Cheesecake by Dexter Gordon, or Down the Lead by Charlie Parker, or whatever the song may be. Spend an hour focusing on that melody. You may or may not learn the melody within that allotted time. It may take a little longer because the melody may be more intricate, and you're trying to figure out the best fingering for the melody. And the fingering is what, as guitarists and maybe as pianists or other instrumentalists, the fingering is what takes the most time, because your fingers haven't developed the muscle memory. And if you're reading the piece, that's one thing, but you want to try to memorize the melodies so that you'll be able to carry them wherever you go. So I would spend an hour working on learning a song or two, however fast, different people learn at different rates. So if you learn songs fast, if you're able to grasp it very quickly, maybe you want to try to learn 2 songs in a day or 3 songs in that hour. However, you know your own learning ability. So I would say starting out, just so you can keep everything on a consistent basis. Scales first for an hour. If you have a 4-hour increment of or 4-hour practice time allotment, hour scales, hour learning a song. Then after you learn the melody for that song, go and find a good recording and start listening and dissecting it and transcribing that recording that you like. I'm a big proponent, as you all know, for transcribing, because that is, to me, that is the best teacher ever. And that's where all the greats, they learned from transcribing. Because most of them didn't, they didn't go to school for music, or they just learned from transcribing. A lot of the great musicians that we revere learned by ear. So I would encourage an hour of transcribing the song, transcribing an artist or someone who's playing the song that you're studying for that day. So if you're studying Donna Lee for that day, then find somebody who you like and just take a bit. You can transcribe the entire solo. I like to try to transcribe entire solos just because it's a challenge for myself. But some people don't enjoy transcribing and they loathe it. So you may just want to find bits and pieces of a solo that you like and just see how that soloist is playing through those changes, so that when you start to play it, which is the last hour of the day, when you start playing through the song, then you'll know, okay, Michael Brecker used this particular approach over these changes, so let me try that method and see how it works for me. It may or may not work for you, but this is how you'll eventually start to develop your own voice as well, because what I like, you may not like. What you like, I may not like, but it's what you like, and that's what resonates in your spirit or your soul. So that's how you develop your own voice. Once you get the mechanics and the facility on the instrument, everything else comes from, it all comes from your heart or what you enjoy listening to. So that's how I would break up my practice time. If you don't have 4 hours, once everything gets back to normal, you may only have 2 hours a day. So then if that's the case, you break it up into 30-minute increments. But in most cases, you want to try to keep a balanced schedule, because it's just like going to the gym. If you go to the gym, if you only work out one arm all the time, the other arm is going to be weak. So I definitely would encourage to try to balance out your practice day. And lastly, one of the most important things when it comes to being a working musician, and you'll find, is to be able to read. Not read tablature, but to read standard notation. Reading has allowed me to be in playing situations where other guitar players may not be able to, because I can read. Even if your sight reading is not as not as good, but you can read, it'll put you in a different bracket than somebody who only plays by ear. There's a lot of great musicians who don't read. George Benson is one of them. He doesn't read music, but he's George Benson, But as a session player, if you choose to play in recording sessions and things of that nature, or be on in society gigs and stuff, reading is definitely will be to your advantage. So I would encourage you, if you don't read, this book right here is one of my favorite books to start. And it's a Berkeley series book that I started using when I was first started playing guitar. And it basically has all the basics and the mechanics of the instrument. And as you go through this book, some of the songs, it's just learning to read. So don't get caught up into, if the songs sound a little cheesy or whatever, but just focus on the reading, So I would say if you don't like to read, just 15 minutes a day. Just work on it for 15 minutes a day, and say if you have an hour for scales, maybe you do 45 minutes of scales and 15 minutes reading every day, until you decide you want to do more. But definitely put reading into your practice regimen, standard notation reading. And it's amazing because once you start to read music, you can start looking at piano charts, you can start looking at other pieces of music, and that's just a whole nother spectrum to pull from. And not to mention you'll get respect from other musicians, like, hey man, this guitar player can read. Because guitarists, we get a bad rep by other musicians, like, oh man, he can't read. So that's how I would break it up. Keep it balanced, scales / reading, or we'll just say theory. Learning songs, transcribing, playing through the song. That's the last step. You want to spend the last part of your practice day just playing, whatever you feel, even if it sounds bad. Just play, because the more you play, the things that you're studying will come out. And that is also how you develop your own sound, by just playing. The more you play in performance situations, and hopefully once you get to a point where you can go play with other musicians and play out, that's a whole nother, that's an entirely different teaching tool. When you're playing out on the bandstand with other musicians, there's a whole different thing that happens to you when it comes to your performance, because now you're on the spot. You don't have time to think about, oh, I transcribed this song, or I got to do a sale. It's just play. And though that experience is the best teacher above all, just getting out and playing. So hopefully that makes sense, and hopefully I answered the question. I would just say, try to, once again, balance your time between learning songs, playing scales or doing theory work, transcribing solos, and just playing through the songs that you're working on, because that, in essence, that's how you're going to become a better musician. That's how you're going to grow. And I guarantee if you do those things, you'll be the best you that you can be. You'll be a great musician because you're disciplined, you're doing everything that you need to do to get yourself to the next level. So hopefully that makes sense, and let me know if you have any other additional comments or questions. I'd love to get to it.